Hi, I'm Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach at Defend and Publish, and welcome to episode 97, Get Your Writing Session Back After an Interruption. This is not my usual location to record a podcast. If you're watching it on YouTube, I'm actually in a classroom where I teach because I had to juggle some things and move them around today to make sure that I got my writing session back after an interruption. So today we're actually going to do a little bit of math to show how I got 120 minutes back after ostensibly losing them, or I thought I was going to lose them due to something that happens to a lot of academic parents. I had a kid that didn't feel well this morning. And so normally my writing time is after I drop my daughter off at school, but today it did not happen because I let her sleep in because she wasn't feeling well. And so what I'm going to do today is just show where I got the time back after having some things that were, something unexpected thrown at me in the morning. So I'm going to go ahead and share a screen, but if you're listening on audio only, you don't need the slides to see this if you can follow along with some math. So let me go ahead and share that. So what I initially had planned, I talk about this on the podcast a lot, but I tend to use my very first child-free alone time hours Monday through Friday to get scholarly writing done. And I've been pretty lucky that I usually don't have to teach until 11 a.m. or later. That was not always the case when I was on the tenure track. I was teaching at 8, I was teaching at 9 a.m. But now I do try to schedule classes 11 o'clock or later because I know that if I don't get some writing finished in the morning, I'm more likely to be interrupted, as is the case with a lot of us. But the math that I'm going to show today can really work for anybody depending on how much you can move around. So what's showing on the screen for those of you listening on the podcast was basically what my schedule looked like. And it pretty much looked like this. I drop my daughter up at school, I get a cup of coffee, I go to the library, and I try to write from 8:30 to about 10:50 before teaching a class at 11 a.m. I'm allowed to cut it that close because I write in the library. The classroom I teach in is right next to the library. It's a 2-minute walk. I already had everything ready to go and set up. So all I had to do was turn on the screen. So that was my plan. I had class from 11 to 12. I was going to go to my personal training session. I mentioned that I'm starting to try to force some accountability with working out. So I'm not just sitting at my desk writing all the time. But I had a personal training session scheduled from 12:30 to 1:15. And then after that, I have around an hour and a half before I have to pick up my daughter again from school. And so usually on Tuesdays, I usually have a nicer lunch, like I actually take a legitimate lunch. And then I had an afternoon meeting before I had to pick her up. And sometimes I just eat lunch at my desk, but on Tuesdays, which is the day I'm recording this, I usually have a longer lunch only because I also teach again at night. And so sometimes that's the big meal for the day. So I usually have that. And then every day I usually am in a school pickup line or commuting to school pickup for between 2:15 and 3:15 p.m. round trip, going to the school, waiting in the line, and then bringing my child home. And then after that, on Tuesdays, I usually prep for my night class for about an hour, and then I go to work and I go teach the class from 5 to 8 p.m. So that was what was planned. But then this morning, I woke my daughter up, and then she wasn't feeling well this morning. So, normally I would not be writing as early as 7:15 a.m., but I did some quick juggling, and I decided I could actually squeeze in an hour before I woke her back up again. So I just let her sleep in. It wasn't like she was at home sick. And I definitely should do an episode on what do you do about a sick day, for whatever reason. But in this case, I had to take her to school around 10. And so what I wanted to do, just to make sure she had a half a day. So what I wanted to do was at least get some writing done before I left home. And so I just bumped up my writing time a little bit earlier because I knew that I could get some writing completed between 7:15 and 8:15 before I woke her up. And that's what I did. I only had an hour, so I did not get my 2 hours and 20 minutes that I've been trying to get on weekdays. The 20 minutes is sort of a bonus. I always shoot for at least 2 hours if you've been listening to other episodes. So I wrote from 7:15 to 8:15, so that gave me 1 hour. And then between 8:15 and 10 a.m., I pretty much was back in what I call the morning hustle, where I was making breakfast and getting, lunches packed. I had ended up letting my older daughter also stay because she had stayed up very late last night studying for a test. And in my case, it was just easier to have both of them go to school at the same time. So between 8:15 and 10 a.m., I got no work done. I packed up our stuff. I got us ready to go, fed people breakfast, made lunches. And then at 10 o'clock, I had a meeting that was supposed to be later in the afternoon in this 1:15 time slot. It was a phone meeting, fortunately. So I was able to move up the call and do the meeting while I was driving. So I basically did the meeting that was supposed to be later in the afternoon a little bit earlier. And I got to work around 10:30 and then had class from 11 to 12. So between 10:30 and 11, I just did some errands that I needed to do on campus. I knew I didn't have time to open up my laptop or go to the library. I am a big fan of writing in 15-minute segments, but in this case, I had some things that I needed to get for my class tonight. So I moved all of that kind of errand work up before 11 a.m., whereas on my current schedule, it's not really showing in there, but it's part of my class preparation time between 3:30 and 4:30. So then I went and taught my class. I texted my trainer and said, hey, can we just meet for a half hour today instead of 45 minutes, which I understand is kind of sacrificing some personal health, but I decided it's better for me to get there for a shorter amount of time than to not get there at all. So I shortened that just to a half hour because I knew if I did that, I could still grab a lunch through a drive-through somewhere and then have about another hour to get some writing done from 1:15 to 2:15. That's not my favorite time to write. Usually after I work out with a personal trainer, I'm kind of tired. It's kind of heavy weightlifting kind of work. And it's not my best time to write at all. But what I decided to do was I'm going to pick up some lunch in a drive-through and then go, or maybe even get lunch at a coffee shop, because this is actually happening live. You're hearing a live episode. But my plan is basically to have lunch and do some writing together in a time somewhere between 1:15 and 2:15. So there's where I got a second hour back. I did one early before I ever left the house. There's a second hour right there. But then I still have my hard time slot of 2:15 to 3:15 where I'm either driving to the school commute, waiting in the pickup line, or I'm driving back home again to drop my daughter off. And so for what I'm going to do with that, with my last 20 minutes, is basically have my laptop in the car. I made sure my battery got charged this morning and I left the writing up on the screen. And once I pull into the school, I'm going to flip open my laptop and do that last 20 minutes on my laptop in the car. I don't like to do it, but I have done it and I'm going to do it again because this is part of the math lesson for today, is that I know that if I just say, well, my kid's sick, my day got screwed up, I didn't get any writing done, it's another day that I didn't move forward on my progress. And it also means that in my case, I have a deadline, October 31st. So I don't have the 120 minutes to lose. I don't have them. So I needed to make sure that I got them. And I also needed to make sure that I got them in before around 3:30. Because in theory, could I write for an hour before class? Yes. But have I done my course preparation? No. So I needed that time. I need an hour to prep for my graduate seminar from 5 to 8 p.m. I don't need a lot of time, but I do need that hour. And I do much better with these 3-hour seminars personally with teaching if I prep for them right before, because students are still emailing me with questions, or I'm still reading through some of their work, even as early as like Monday night. And I have a class on Tuesday night. So I like to do a little bit more just-in-time preparation. And I roughly know, I've taught this class before, I know what kinds of things I need to do. So I knew that writing isn't going to happen if I don't get it finished before 3:30. And I know also it's not happening after 8 p.m. because by then I'll have already worked a full day. I know, although again, I have done it, I'm not going to go to the library for another hour before I go home and do work. So in this case, this is where I got 120 minutes back. And I just want to urge you to think about, if you have a writing session get interrupted, if you just think about it in terms of straight math, if you normally devote 2 hours and you lose one of those hours, or a student eats up your time for 45 minutes, maybe there's a way to get that hour and 15 minutes back, or the 45 minutes back, or whatever time was lost to you. That would be one way that you're still making progress. And as I would argue, you're getting a little bit resilient with your writing strategies. So if these interruptions happen, and they often do, you're able to get some more writing done. So hopefully this helps in terms of just looking at how I juggled some pieces. And then I also want to mention, as part of our sponsorship with the Textbook and Academic Authors Association, we recently partnered with them, and I've mentioned that on a previous episode, but I'll be sharing with you different resources of the day from that organization. I believe strongly in what they do. I am a member. I think it's one of the coolest organizations out there. Otherwise, I would not let them sponsor our podcast. But one of the things I really like on there is they have a giant presentations on demand library. And why I like it is they're one of the few that I've found in terms of organizations that actually has presentations on time management and productivity. That's what I'm interested in. So there's plenty of them in there. You can see one in there about even thinking through productivity as a concept to understand a joyful writing practice, because it's not so much just to be productive, but you want to make sure that you're feeling satisfied and even joyful about your writing, as I've mentioned in a previous episode. I'll link to that one in the show notes. So if you have a chance, check out Textbook and Academic Authors Association and see that free resource. Once you join, you have an access to this library of the presentations on demand. So great resource for writing. I use it. And hopefully these tips help for today. Happy writing.